We're just after the hour, so keep us on time and moving along. We'll go ahead and get started. And I'll first start with saying thank you for joining us, and please feel welcome. And we are certainly happy to spend a little time with everyone attending, share a little bit of information. As you can see, it's a financial literacy seminar. So the aim today is to give you a little bit of information, hopefully teach you a little something, and so that you walk away with a little more knowledge than you came with. I know we're excited to spend the time here, and if you are in our lobby or walking past your office, you would probably see, or you might notice, wealth management on the door. But I like to think that really when we work with clients and anyone, much of what we do is actually education or providing a little bit of information to clients, because at the end of the day, it's really about having a good understanding of where you are. And while it's true we do other things, the basis for a solid financial plan and having a good uh, a good path to healthy financial habits is just knowing what's out there and moving in the right direction, because you have a good understanding of what needs to be done, and how to do it. Um, so today we'll go through some information and present that to you. At the end of the presentation today, time permitting, we'll have time for questions and answers. You should see a chat box available to you. I think some people have started adding some questions there, but you can, during the presentation or at any point, I believe it should be open to everyone. You can type in questions and we'll answer those as we get towards the end of the hour. All right, and so as we get into this, I like to quickly start with a little personal story, because I think anything like this is always great when you have something to tie back to or an experience, and why really kind of illustrate why I think financial literacy and knowledge is an important thing. Um, I, like my other colleagues here in the office and on today's call, have a background and understanding and education in financial planning and wealth management, but I can say it's not where I started. And my first memory of any kind of financial literacy is with my parents, who, while they're very well-meaning and thoughtful people, were not what I would call financially sophisticated. And so growing up, I didn't know much about stocks and bonds, mutual funds, wealth management, any of that, till much later, when I went to school and got more formally educated on the topic. However, so as I was much younger, there's something I really wanted, and that was, for anyone who might know what this is, a Game Boy, which is little a little video game that, when I was much younger, was an expensive thing. And so of course I asked my parents for one, and I was told, well, it's an expensive thing, but you can work and earn money for it. Of course, being as young as I was, I couldn't get a job, but I could do chores and I could earn a little bit. And so along the way, I would do whatever I was asked to do, make a little money, and was able to uh, use that as an experience to understand budgeting and well, cash management, savings. Of course, I didn't know that at the time. All I really knew was this is kind of the way you approach life, to do the things that you want to do or get the thing that you want to get. So even though it was not taught to me in kind of simple terms, it was something that I've carried with me for a long time. So hopefully, after today, whatever we go through, all the topics we cover, there'll be something you can take with you and continue to use in your career, use in your life, really, and then be financially successful. Okay, so That's my quick story, and hopefully it's meaningful to you. Maybe I'm sure everyone has their own experience or something similar. Um, so today, let's talk about the quickly cover the subjects that we will introduce to you. In a moment, I'll quickly introduce our team that's in front of you. But beyond that, we're gonna go through, as I mentioned, where my personal story was budgeting and savings. But where does that money go, and how do you save, and how do you actually go about doing that? Well, Jacob will talk about accounts. Prioritization is really goal setting. Investments, of course, is part of the thing that we all think about when we talk about financial planning and wealth management. Risk management is an important aspect, and there's a lot of different areas in risk management which we'll touch on. And then finally, what does it all mean when you bring it all together? What solutions uh, can you come up with when you're trying to accomplish something, accomplish your goals? So with that, again, we have our team, myself. My name is Sergio. I have not introduced myself. Also along is Jacob, Ashlyn, Nate, and Paul. So I will let them go forward. I believe first we have starting off on the our journey here today with budgeting and savings is Ashlyn.
Thank you, Sergio. Can y'all hear me okay? Okay, perfect. So the first step to establishing a sound financial plan is figuring out a budget that works for you. Um, Everybody has different goals. We know that everyone's budget is going to look a little bit different, but budgeting is so important because it ensures that you're able to save up for those future expenses, save for the future, and avoid any unneeded debt. Below, we have our expenses broken up into needs and wants. So our needs, those are all of our non-discretionary expenses. So the expenses that we absolutely have to have to live. So our living expenses, whether that's your rent, your house payment, your bills, things such as that. And then your wants are expenses that vary depending on the person and the goals that you have. And then we move on to the savings portion. So we really want to emphasize the idea that we recommend you should save at least 20% of your monthly cash flow each month. And we say this to ensure that you have that stability if any unexpected circumstances or experiences were to come your way. And again, these are all general guidelines that we recommend to our clients, but we also understand that everyone has opportunity costs. Opportunity costs are individual to each client and mean something different to each client. So here we have this $100. So I might want to spend my $100 at a dinner, whereas you might want to spend your $100 at a concert, or you may want to invest it. But regardless, I really want to circle back to the idea that we recommend saving 20% of your monthly cash flow each month, even after all of your expenses are taken care of. And with the money you've saved, there are many different things that you can do with that money. And so now I'm going to pass it over to Jacob, and he's going to explain that a little bit more.
All right. Thank you, Ashlyn. So yeah, when we talk about that 20% of savings from your income, there's multiple different places that we can save that or stash it away. So there's three general account types that we like to think about when we're talking about, where we're placing our savings. The first is tax deferred. So what that means is you're putting money in there, money in accounts that has not been taxed yet. And then when you take it out at a later date, that's when you pay the taxes from it. So think of that as your employer-sponsored retirement accounts, like your 401ks, or even a retirement account that you can set up yourself, like an individual retirement account. Okay. So the next is your tax-free accounts. So that's money that you've already paid taxes on, and then you're putting into retirement accounts, and then the growth from there, when you take it out, you're not paying any taxes on. So you'll see that with the prefix Roth on most, if not all, of these types of accounts. Okay. So the next is your taxable accounts. So this is money that you've already put or you've already paid taxes on. You're putting into accounts like your checking or savings account or just a regular brokerage account, and you're investing in. And any growth above what you've already put in there when you pull it out is taxable at a different rate than what you would for your tax deferred or tax free account, because those are retirement accounts. There's individual different taxation environments there. But so those are the three main types of accounts that maybe you have or haven't heard of. There are two accounts that are very specific when it comes to financial planning that we like to point out, and we'll talk about in a little bit later. And that is your HSA, which is a health savings account, and a 529 plan. Your health savings account or HSA is money that you're putting in pre-tax, and then when you take it out for qualified medical expenses is also tax-free. So it's got that double tax savings essentially. And then 529 plans as well. Think of it as the same as an HSA, but for education savings. So you can stash money in there for, before taxes and take it out tax-free if it's used for qualified education expenses. So those are two kind of very important ones to think about when you're thinking about your goals and where you want to save that 20% from your budget. So we'll go ahead and move to the next one. So we know how much we need to save. We know generally where we can save it to, but where should we start? As a principle of financial planning, we like to say, all right, let's think about today. Let's think about any cash needs that you might have in the next couple of days, months, weeks, however it be. And so we like to at least save an emergency fund as your first line of defense, 3 to 6 months of your discretionary spending or those wants and needs, or excuse me, non-discretionary. Save 3 to 6 months in that emergency fund so that should your car break down and you need to go get it, you've got cash available and you don't need to go and pull it from any of your retirement accounts. The next line of planning for your prioritization is contingency. This is less of a thing, but more of an action plan and being able to say, okay, if there is a life-altering event, what do I have in place to be able to cover some large life-changing event that's going to require me to spend money on? And so that's where risk management, which Nate's going to cover in a couple of slides, that's where risk management comes in. Do I have disability insurance to cover, a couple months of cash flow? Don't like to talk about it, but if, I happen to get hit by the proverbial bus, will I have life insurance to cover my family's needs or my needs or anything like that? Or do I have a system in place to go and get cash where I need it, where it's liquid and I can go grab it? The next item is employer match. So that would be your retirement savings. If your employer offers a retirement plan and they offer a match for you to be able to say, all right, for every $1,000, just for general sake, for every $1,000, we'll match that $1,000 that they put into their retirement account. And you can think of that as free money. It's almost like they're paying you just a little bit more. And that's, very important to be able to maximize how much you're saving on top of what you're already saving. Your employer is giving you that same thing. Okay. So next is just paying off high interest debt. Nobody likes being in debt. Nobody likes owing somebody else cash at the end of the month, And so especially when you're paying a high interest amount, we want to start reducing that. So you're paying people less and you're paying yourself more, whenever you can. So getting that paid down is very important when considering your budget. Once you figure out a budgeting plan, you've got your savings, you've got your emergency fund, stuff like that, it's also important to consider just your regular living. What upcoming expenses do you have? Do you want to buy a new car? Are you expecting to buy a home? Do you know any other travel expenses are coming up? So laying out in that plan, making sure that you've got a contingency plan essentially ahead of time for any of that. Maximizing your employer plan, like we said, it's always important to make sure that we're doing what we can within our budget to save now for later. Your HSA, the health savings account, that's very tax advantage. So if it's available, we want to make sure that you're participating. And then your brokerage and your education savings. So the brokerage is just another, again, like we said, it's a taxable account. It's a way for you to build up cash so that you can have in the future, should you need it. It's just another bucket to pull from. And the education, you know, if it's saving to pay for yourself, a family member, your future children, if need be it, you know, it's also a very important thing to consider when you're deciding where to allocate those funds. So that's the hierarchy, at least, that we've given so far, to where, you know, what we would recommend for clients and where they should go. So within those accounts, obviously, you're going to have investments and things to help grow those accounts. And to that, I'm going to hand it off to Paul, and he's going to speak on that.
Well, thanks, Jacob. I certainly appreciate that. So now when it's time to start investing these dollars, it's important to understand there are two primary options. It's going to be stocks and bonds. Stocks, also known as equities, they provide investors ownership in a company. For example, if you own stock in, if you invest into Apple stock, you become a partial owner in Apple. Stocks are attractive because they have the ability to appreciate in value over time. In addition to appreciating in value, some stocks, like Apple, for example, will share their profits with their stockholders, and that's called the dividend. So those dividend payments are advantageous from a stock perspective. Not all stocks provide dividends, so that's an important consideration to make whenever you're deciding what stocks or stocks to invest in. On the other hand, you have bonds, also known as fixed income. If we take the same example of Apple, what you're doing with that bond is you're acting like a lender to Apple. So Apple says, we're going to offer the ability for investors to buy a bond from us. And Apple is going to say, okay, if you give us $1,000 for this bond, we will pay you back $1,000 at a stated maturity date. That stated maturity date could be 10 years, it could be 20 years, it could be 30 years. But in between now and that stated maturity date, it's important to realize that those companies are, or even government entities, are going to pay an interest. So Apple, in this example, would pay you interest every year for loaning them that money through the bond. As you can see, we have these boxes below. They help show that within each of these two investment options, there's multiple categories. Okay, within these categories, you can see that there's a different shade of red. This shade of red resembles the amount of risk for that option. Managing this risk within an investment portfolio is an important task. I would argue that it's one of the more important tasks we as financial professionals have, is the risk management for our clients. As we alluded to earlier, and we're going to talk more about that risk management. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Nate, and he's going to talk to you more about that.
Thanks, Paul. Hi, everyone. I'm Nate, and I'm a new associate here at Frontier. And I'm going to be covering a few subtopics of risk management. I'm going to highlight a couple bullet points for each subtopic. But before I do, so risk is a word often used in this industry. We use it every day with phrases like no risk, no reward, low risk, low reward, high risk, high reward, and risk tolerance. So some of the phrases we use every day, and you know, when it comes to risk and someone's net worth or someone's hard-earned money, like clients don't like that word, don't like the word risk. So fortunately, there are tools and techniques to mitigate risk in developing a portfolio. So we'll talk about portfolio management here, and just to highlight diversification. So what diversification is the right mixture of different types of stocks and bonds that matches your specific risk tolerance, whatever that may be. So it's just like a customized solution geared to make you comfortable with the ups and downs of the financial markets. In addition to that, systematic rebalancing. That's just once you have your portfolio in place, just taking a look at your portfolio. We recommend at least once a year where you're taking a look at it and you're like, okay, am I on track? Am I achieving what I want to achieve? Or do I need to tailor my portfolio one way or the other, either increase stocks or increase bonds or vice versa? So moving on to insurance. So once you've have settled in and are feeling good about your portfolio, the next step, and the way I like to talk about insurance is like you're protecting the ifs. You're protecting if you happen to get hurt and are potentially permanently disabled, or if you tragedy strikes and you happen to lose your life. So there are some insurances that help protect your earning potential throughout your career. The two I'm going to highlight are disability insurance and life insurance. So disability insurance is protecting if something happens to you. Say you have a stroke at a younger age, and then that stroke disables you from being able to do the job that you would normally do, which by impact limits your earning potential. With disability insurance, you can mitigate that risk and get paid X amount of dollars throughout that disability lifetime, throughout your career, say to age 60. Now, there's two types of disability insurance. There's short-term and long-term. And typically, disability insurance is offered through an employer. It'd be wise to get with your human resources department at your job to know and understand if you in fact are offered a disability insurance policy through your work, and what the rules, limitations of those policies may be. The second insurance policy I want to talk about is life insurance. So life insurance is protecting if you were to pass, if you were to die. And life insurance typically gets bought, purchased whenever we start building a family. Say you get married, or say you start having kids. Life insurance will protect your earning income, your salary throughout your working years. So if you do pass away, your family has your income stream still so they could live off of. So that's what life insurance is protecting. Typical for life insurance is a term, what they call a term policy, which just covers your life for X amount of years, typically 30 years. The theory behind it being, okay, once you have reached the age where that policy no longer exists, after that 30 years is complete, you in theory have already earned enough income and built up enough assets where you no longer need the life insurance coverage. And with that, I'll move on to estate planning. So estate planning, so as I mentioned, insurance is if something happens, estate planning is when something happens. And what is that when? That is death. Death is the when. So kind of dark topic that, no one wants to really come to terms to or acknowledge, but a fact of life is we all are going to pass away someday. So that's what estate planning is ensuring that your money goes where you want it to go whenever that time comes. So the two I'll highlight under estate planning are the beneficiary designation and the power of attorneys. So beneficiary designation, that's just ensuring um, that with your accounts, whether they be banking accounts, checking or savings, life insurance policies, um, retirement account policies, whether a 401k or IRA, that you do have a named beneficiary in place, someone who that money is going to go to when you do pass away. So that's what we mean when we're talking beneficiary designation. When it comes to power of attorneys, now there's two types. There's a medical power of attorney, which is identifying someone that you trust to make medical decisions on your behalf in the case that you're unable to make those decisions for yourself. Um, Same thing applies with the more traditional power of attorney, but instead of it being for medical and healthcare related issues, it's more for financial and business related issues. Same thing where you're identifying someone you trust to make those financial and business decisions for you when you no longer have the capacity to do so, whether it be you're disabled or you lack the mental capability to make those decisions for yourself anymore. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about cybersecurity. So I'm sure everyone's aware, like when in this day and age, you have to protect yourself at all times. And that includes like being on the computer, being on your computer, or being on your phone for that matter. So ensuring that you do have dual factor authentication in place whenever you're logging into these platforms, financial platforms, medical platforms, things of that sort, um, just to ensure, just to better protect yourself and your identity. So it's not someone else being able to get in those accounts without your knowledge. Um, Another one I'd like to highlight is the free annual credit report. So this is a great resource. It's a freeannualcreditreport.com. We recommend like a good practice is being able to review your credit report at least once a year. And you could do so just visiting that website and putting in your information and then just reviewing your report, your credit report, to ensure there's nothing out of the ordinary on that report. Things to be looking for would be maybe there's a credit card that you didn't apply for, but it's on your credit report, or a car loan, or a mobile phone, or a utility bill. Those are all examples of things that could potentially be on a credit report that wasn't necessarily your doing. Um, so yeah, that completes my portion of the risk management brief. This time I'm going to give it back to Paul, and he's just going to tie in how all this can work together.
Oh, thanks, Nate. I think I really appreciate you providing, that additional information on risk management. I see we've got a couple of questions in the chat so far regarding more of that portfolio diversification. We'll touch on those as we finish up here. This will be the last slide, and then we'll go ahead and we'll get into the questions. But first, I want to thank the rest of my team for participating today. But then I also want to thank our guests for spending the time with us because we know that your time is valuable. So for kind of for what Nate said, how do we tie this all together? There are really two ways. You can DIY, do it yourself, or you can outsource it. If you go the DIY route, it's going to be a lot of work on yourself to make sure that you're covering all your bases. You're doing the self-monitoring. You're doing the ongoing research because part of our job is navigating these different changes that occur from policy issues. The outsource route, what we would suggest is that you find someone that you can trust to be a personal sounding board and to be that accountability partner for you and your financial goals. We would encourage you to pursue a relationship with someone who has a certified a CFP board designation, which stands for Certified Financial Planner. And the reason why is because they're held to a higher fiduciary standard. In addition to that fiduciary standard, they go through a rigorous training program that's going through a CFP board certified education institution. It's passing an exam, and then it's having at least 2 years of work experience. But on top of that, it's going through multiple hours of continued education every 2 years. So with that, Frontier, we want to be a resource to you. We would love to continue the conversation with anyone that would like to do so. But in the meantime, what we'll do is I'll pass it back to Sergio, and we'll start the questions that we've already started to build in our chat here.